Hands, an artist's worst nightmare. Probably the hardest part of the body to draw, right? But I'll be real with you, they're not as complicated as you might think. This video will show you the structure that I use to draw hands from any angle. I'll try to keep this as beginner friendly as I can, and don't worry, even though we'll touch on some anatomy, I promise it will be simple to follow. Let's start off with the most basic construction of the hand. If you want to draw from imagination, this is where everything begins. As I showed you in my previous video on drawing bodies, we start with a simple shape for the hand, a slightly wide square, kind of like a block that is a bit broader than the wrist. From here we will build everything else. Although technically this shape will be flat if we follow the shape of the hand, don't be afraid in twisting it or bending it slightly to better suggest the shape of a pose. But generally speaking, if the hand pose is quote-unquote flat, like in these references, then a mere square should suffice. Personally, I like bending it when the angles become a bit more complex, like in this reference for example. Now, for the fingers, some people recommend using boxes and others recommend cylinders. What I suggest for you to do is to use both. You will use boxes for sketching an idea on how you think the shape would look like based on the reference, and if the perspective is flat or fairly simple. You will use cylinders to draw over the sketch when the shapes start overlapping with each other and in more complicated angles. Both shapes become easier to draw in perspective and to rotate in space the more you practice drawing them in those complicated angles. Always remember to use reference though. Now, the fingers. From the back view, they are roughly the same length as the hand base. Even if they match exactly, the hand will still look correct. Rather than drawing a curved line for the knuckles, I like to place small spheres where each knuckle will go. This helps a lot when rotating the hand in perspective and to better space the fingers from one another. This way your hands won't look disproportionately wide. Additionally, to better figure out finger length and spacing, try dividing the hand base into 4 sections radiating from the wrist. Think of how the bones in the hand all spread out from that one point. This helps you place each finger accurately. Each finger is divided into 3 parts. Technically, they vary in size. The segment closest to the knuckle is the largest and the tip is the smallest, but for simplicity, you can draw the first 2 sections about the same length and make the last one smaller. When it comes to the fingertip, one thing that makes or breaks the drawing is the fingernail. It tells you the angle and orientation of the finger, and this is where I bring something that I always keep in mind. Remember, you draw first a small line, then you draw a fingernail, and then the rest of the finger. Always include a little gap before the nail. That's what I call the line. Then draw the nail, and then leave a smaller space for the tip. That spacing helps the finger feel dimensional. Even if you don't plan to show the nails in your final drawing, sketching them during the construction helps a lot with proportions and gesture. Now the thumb is what I find the easiest to draw. You start by adding a soft bulge on the side of the hand base. If you look at a hand skeleton, you'll see the thumb bone connects a little below the center of the hand. That's where the points of the lines of this bulge connect. I divide the thumb into 2 equal parts. And like with fingers, I also use a fingernail to lock in the angle. And once again, line, then fingernail, then the rest of the finger. This rule helps even when you're not sure how to construct the thumb in a complex angle. Now, I know I'm generalizing when I say to draw the rest of the finger, since spacing is fairly important, but you can use your own hand as a point of reference to get an idea of how long are the spacings. Now let's talk a little bit about tendons. When you lift your fingers, you might notice lines on the back of your hand. Those are tendons. And in a summarized and not so anatomically correct way, they run from the wrist to the fingers. Drawing them helps guide where the knuckles sit. The divisions I showed you earlier are also useful for this step. Knuckles themselves form a triangular pattern. I usually sketch a simple shape to define this before adding detail. Through reference and repetition, your visual library for these details will grow. And to connect the hand to the wrist, in the back view, you have to add or visualize this small rectangular extension between the hand and the wrist. It's fairly easy to draw, and as you keep drawing with references. And on the palm view, you can connect them just directly. Just remember that the hand is slightly wider than the wrist. Now, let's talk about the palm structure. For the palm, we divide the hand base into 3 parts. The thenar, which is this thumb muscle, the hypothenar, which is like the pinky pad, and then the base of the fingers. The 2 shapes that matter the most here are the thenar and the base of the fingers. The pinky pad only becomes relevant in poses where the pinky is the first finger you see, like in certain side views. In most other angles, if you try to draw all 3 shapes at once, the hand can end up looking off or overly complicated. So focus on what's visible based on the pose. The thumb muscle and finger base are your main priorities. So out of the 3 shapes, you often only draw 2. Let's talk a little bit about drawing the hands in perspective and foreshortening. For dynamic or complex poses, the curled fingers like a fist don't extend past the base of the palm. When drawing fingers in overlapping shapes, always consider this. The main distance is determined by the first section of the finger. Then draw what will be the utmost front, which is the third section, the fingertip. After that, connect the two using the middle section, which represents the joint. If that's a bit too hard, then first sketch the silhouette of the finger pose, and then draw the third section where the fingernails are and then connect them to the base. If the hand is at an angle and the fingers are somewhat curled, each finger section tends to be slightly perpendicular to the one before it. The joint forms this natural curve between them. The exact angle between each segment depends on how curled the finger is, but thinking about it this way helps gives your hand drawing solid structure and depth. And once again, what do we remember? The line, then the fingernail, and then the rest of the finger. It works every time. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope this helped you understand hand construction a bit better. If you found it useful, please give it a like, consider subscribing, and if you want more beginner-friendly art tutorials, I'll see you in the next one. Now, if you're curious to see how I put all of this into practice, I'm adding a short time lapse of me drawing hands using everything we covered. Feel free to stick around or click away if you're done for today. Regardless, thanks for watching.